gods descending to earth, converging on the same hallowed ground, a holy shrine built to mark the landing of a meteorite, secret caves whose walls are lined with images of strange half-human beings. Are holy sites around the world the product of man's reverence for God, or are they the result of contact with ancient space travelers? There's no question that these monuments might have had some kind of extraterrestrial intervention. They're just too immense, too perfect to have been constructed by ancient mankind. Yes, it was human beings who built these places, but with technology given by extraterrestrials. Millions of people around the world believe we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrial beings. What if it were true? Did ancient aliens really help shape our history? And if so, how did they influence the creation of mankind's sacred places? Perhaps the most sacred site in all of humanity, the place where three of the world's most prominent religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all converge, is the heart and soul of what is called the Holy Land, the Temple Mount in the old city of Jerusalem. This 35-acre plateau, surrounded by ancient walls, has been considered sacred for thousands of years. The Temple Mount is sacred to Jews and Christians because it's at this spot that Abraham bound Isaac and prepared to sacrifice him in Genesis 22. For Muslims, this site is sacred because it's from the rock where the dome of the rock stands today that Muhammad ascended into heaven. What we have on the Temple Mount is a mixture of three religions, each with an aspect that makes the place even more important. But originally, it was a place where God touched down on planet Earth. Ever after, it became the place where communications with the afterlife or the divine realm were made. Each year, millions of pilgrims come to the Temple Mount to worship God and celebrate holy occasions. But why? In the 10th century BC, King David and the Israelites chose this rocky high ground to build a great temple. This was the site that David, the great king of Israel, had conquered, and it already had a kind of blessing about it because it was where the people of Israel were destined to center their lives, in this sacred place. According to the Bible, King David, who had just made Jerusalem his capital, wanted to build a house for the Lord. But for reasons that aren't entirely clear, he didn't do so, and it was his son Solomon who built the first Jewish temple. Completed in 957 BC, by David's son King Solomon, the temple was said to house the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest believed to contain the stone tablets on which the Ten Commandments were written. But according to many ancient astronaut theorists, the Ark also may have contained a power source of extraterrestrial origin. In the Bible, you read about the Ark of the Covenant. Moses was ordered to go to the Holy Mountain, and the Lord gave Moses instructions to construct the Ark of the Covenant. As we know later, the Ark of the Covenant was something very, very dangerous. Solomon installed it in the temple, and it served as the focal point, in its innermost room, the Holy of Holies, into which only the chief priest, the high priest, could go. It's in this innermost sanctum, the Holy of Holies, where God was viewed as resident. So in a sense, the Ark of the Covenant was God's throne in the Holy of Holies, and the place where God reigned from Jerusalem. According to the Talmud, a central text of Judaism, King Solomon possessed a magic ring with a special symbol called the Seal of Solomon, today known as the Star of David. This special ring would allow him to accomplish things beyond what mortals could usually achieve. Part of what he could do with that ring, the seal on it, was control demons, giving him power and ability in the construction of the temple that others would never have had. According to Islamic texts, King Solomon also had a magic carpet of green silk, sufficient for his throne and all his forces to stand on. Now, magic carpets, do they exist? Of course not. So what were our ancestors trying to describe in those stories? Where was he getting these strange powers? Was he really in contact with extraterrestrials who had literally given him a spacecraft to fly around in? After studying the intricate geometry and design of Solomon's temple, even Sir Isaac Newton questioned if the king had built the temple with secret knowledge. It was very highly advanced architecturally, catching certain kinds of light, being very precise in its astronomical alignment. The question for modern scholars and architects is, what was the level of technology available to King Solomon that allowed him to design and lay out the temple according to these principles? There's a text called the Testament of Solomon, that suggests Solomon didn't only use mortal builders and architects, but brought in demons. He forced them to do some of the labor because demons are especially strong. Might an advanced energy source within the Ark of the Covenant have allowed King Solomon to wield immense power? And might that power have had an extraterrestrial origin? After King Solomon's temple was destroyed in the 6th century BC by the Babylonians, a second temple was built on the same site in the 1st century BC by King Herod the Great. According to the New Testament, it was the second temple that played a significant role in the life of Jesus of Nazareth. It was here that Jesus chased out the moneylenders, an event which led to his crucifixion and death at the hands of both the Jews and the Romans. It was also nearby, on the Mount of Olives, that Jesus reportedly rose from the dead and ascended bodily into heaven. When we get to the story of Jesus, we find that his disciples believed that he ascended into heaven and that someday he would return. So this idea of the extraterrestrial reality of which Jesus is part is something that the biblical tradition says, yes, you can accept that. But might Jesus, like King Solomon before him, really have been connected to another worldly reality, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest? The topic of ascension when dealing with extraterrestrial contacts is a common one, because we have Jesus ascending in the New Testament. These stories give credence to the fact that there is some type of technology that is lifting up human beings into a craft, into a waiting ship. Nearly 6 centuries after the Second Hebrew Temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, Persian invaders built yet another holy shrine on the site, the Dome of the Rock, known to Muslims as the Noble Sanctuary. This magnificent 7th century architectural monument of Islam was built over a huge outcrop of bedrock which, according to Muslim tradition, was the site from which Muhammad had been taken up into heaven by God. In fact, there is a hole in the rock showing the exact route that Muhammad took when he ascended into heaven to Allah, to have a vision of the divine, and to return back once again to this very site. So for Muslims, the Dome of the Rock is a very significant and sacred place. According to the Islamic Quran, the rock from which Muhammad ascended is called the foundation stone. This rock is believed by religious scholars to have also been the very stone beneath the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. This is where God came down to earth, and where certain people actually are said to have made contact with God. So this is a piece of rock which is of such importance because something of the divine manifested itself there. That stone signifies the coming together of the kingdoms of heaven and earth. The problem is we've forgotten that whoever visited us in the past wasn't God, but extraterrestrials. Some ancient astronaut theorists believe that the Temple Mount was one of the earliest intergalactic gateways. But could space travelers really have landed here tens of thousands of years ago? It seems that the reverence for the site of Jerusalem may stem from it early on being some kind of a spaceport, a gigantic landing pad for extraterrestrials. And that's why King Solomon built his temple there, and then later the Muslims built the Dome of the Rock. Might the Temple Mount really be the place where ancient aliens first made contact with early humans? And might its spiritual significance help provide proof of its unique extraterrestrial history? Perhaps further evidence may be found only a few hundred miles away, in the heart of the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia, the heart of the Middle East. In a narrow valley 50 miles inland from the Red Sea lies Islam's holiest city, Mecca. Here, in the year 570, Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was born. Considered by Muslims to be a prophet and the messenger of God. At that time, Mecca was a prosperous commercial center, a port from which goods brought from India and farther away in Asia were transported overland north to Damascus and by sea to Egypt. It was in this commercial center that the Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation. If you want to encounter Muhammad, if you want to meet with his ideas, one of the greatest places to go is Mecca. Muslims pray in the direction of Mecca 5 times a day. So certainly, as a holy shrine, it is the center of the earth, a heaven's gate where the opening of heaven takes place, and that's why it is so revered. In the center of Mecca lies the Grand Mosque, the largest and holiest place of worship for Muslims. At the heart of the Grand Mosque is the Kaaba, a cube-shaped granite structure measuring 43 feet high by 36 feet wide. According to Islamic tradition, the Kaaba was built approximately in 2000 BC by Abraham, a figure who serves as patriarch to both Muslims and Jews. In the Bible, it is said that Abraham had a couple of children, and his first son was Ishmael, and his second son was Isaac. And it is said in Islam that Abraham and Ishmael were, in fact, the two that came to build the Kaaba. Covered by black silk and embroidered in gold, the Kaaba is the most sacred structure in Islam. Nearly 3 million Muslims make a pilgrimage to the Kaaba every year, a journey known as the Hajj. Every Muslim, if he or she can do so sometime in a lifetime, is obliged to go on a pilgrimage or the Hajj to Mecca, in a way, to walk in the footsteps of Abraham and Ishmael, to walk in the footsteps of Muhammad. The main ritual performed at the Kaaba is for pilgrims to enter into the enclosure where the Kaaba is, a cubical structure, and circumnavigate the Kaaba 7 times in a counterclockwise direction. In one part of that building, there is a black stone embedded in the side of the structure, and nobody knows exactly where it came from. But the legend is that it came down from the sky, was brought down by an angel, and found its way into this particular location of the shrine. There's another tradition that suggests this rock had been worshipped long before Muhammad's time, and that it is, in fact, an ancient meteorite, which for ancient peoples would have been a sign from a god or gods. During the time they're encircling the Kaaba 7 times, if they are able, they should try to kiss the meteorite stone. But because of the numbers of people, especially in recent times, that's impossible. So the practice is that if you're unable to kiss the stone, you should point towards it. That shows your respect and veneration. People believe that it was a meteorite that fell from the heavens, and they've been able to keep some of it. It's in small fragments, it's broken away, but they've kept it intact with a silver lining structure around it. It is a magnificent artifact. Might the black stone really be a meteorite, as many scientists and scholars believe? If so, what does that say about the historical and possibly metaphysical origins of the Islamic faith? It's kind of strange, really, that all the Muslims are praying towards Mecca and to this black stone that's there. There are stories that the Kaaba in Mecca is radiating some kind of energy, energizing people and increasing their spirituality and health. Perhaps it's coming from this meteorite, this black stone of extraterrestrial origin. Today, because of its intense spiritual significance in the Islamic world, any forensic examination of the black stone is strictly forbidden. As far as Muslims are concerned, the black stone simply descended from paradise. Archangel Michael descended from the sky and gave Abraham information in written form, sealed into a stone, and this stone is today's Kaaba. It is said to be a stone from heaven. The ancients possessed an ability to look toward the heavens to get their divine guidance. This could very well be another one of those cases. According to researchers, the position of the Kaaba is precisely aligned with the rising of the star Canopus, the cycles of the moon, and the summer and winter solstices. But just how and where did the ancients obtain such advanced knowledge of astronomy? Just as the planets revolve around the sun, the ritual of traveling around the Kaaba was a symbolic reference for knowledge of astronomical alignments taking place at that time. In Islam, we have stories of winged angels that have descended with lots of light, a lot of wind, and the earth trembling. So what was described there wasn't necessarily a divine encounter, but a flesh and blood extraterrestrial encounter. Might the Kaaba's interplanetary alignment suggest that ancient Muslims may have possessed secret knowledge? And might their veneration for the black stone really serve to commemorate an ancient encounter with extraterrestrial beings? As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, the answer to both questions is a resounding yes. And they point to further proof in a series of caves located halfway around the world. Western India, April 28, 1819. While hunting tigers just outside the village of Ajanta, British officer John Smith discovers 29 elaborate cave temples carved into the side of a rocky cliff overlooking the Waghora River. Believed to have been constructed between the 2nd century BC and the 7th century AD, these caves are adorned with intricate sculptures and paintings that depict stories from Buddhist scriptures. The walls are lined with images of strange, half-human beings, celestial figures, and mysterious symbols. Some of the paintings show figures that appear to be floating or flying, leading some researchers to speculate about the presence of advanced technology or extraterrestrial influence. These caves are a marvel of ancient engineering and artistry. The level of detail and the complexity of the sculptures suggest knowledge and skills that seem advanced for the time. Could these ancient caves be more than just a testament to human devotion and creativity? Might they hold clues to contact with otherworldly beings? Do they serve as another piece in the puzzle pointing to extraterrestrial influence on humanity's sacred places? For those who believe in the ancient astronaut theory, sites like the Temple Mount, the Kaaba, and the Ajanta caves offer compelling evidence that our ancestors were not alone. They suggest that divine encounters recorded in religious texts and etched into stone may, in fact, be accounts of interactions with visitors from beyond our world. If this is true, then the sacred places that have shaped our civilizations and religions are more than just monuments to faith. They are markers of humanity's early encounters with beings from the stars. The question remains: how much of our history has been influenced by these ancient astronauts, and what other secrets lie hidden in the holy sites scattered across the globe?